Welcome to this Leading Professionals seminar from the IEEE Computer Society. Our presentation today is on key components of a successful estimation process in planning for software projects. The talk will start with a summary level view of the importance of leveraging historical data, sizing, and productivity measures at both the organizational and the project level, and we will conclude with a demonstration of the slim suite of tools to show one way that the estimation process can be automated and streamlined while tracking these key factors. Our presenter, Keith Ciocco, is Vice President of Sales at Quantitative Software Management, or QSM. He has been with QSM for over 18 years and has over 26 years total experience working in sales and customer service. Keith's primary responsibilities include managing business development, existing client relations, customer retention, and response. Now I am happy to turn things over to Keith.
Thanks everybody for joining us today. My name is Keith Ciocco and I'm with Quantitative Software Management, or better known as QSM. And today I thought we would spend some time going over some of the key components that help make estimation process successful. And what I thought I would do is take you through a few slides and then actually spend a little more time on an actual demonstration showing you how we can make all this work. The title, of course, is Key Components of a Successful Estimation Process. I thought I'd give you a little background on QSM. That's the company I work for. We've been in business for 37 years, and we were founded by a gentleman named Larry Putnam, and he is one of the pioneers in the estimation industry. So his early work in the 70s actually helped establish the groundwork for the software estimation industry as we know it today. We are based in McLean, Virginia, and we have affiliate offices worldwide, and we're mostly known for being the provider of the Slim Suite and for our consulting services and training. So we do a lot of consulting in the project estimation area, demand management, project oversight, benchmarking, things like that. The backbone of our business is really this large industry database that we have, the QSM industry database. It's got thousands of projects, completed projects, and we use that to help validate the tools and the services and the training that we provide. To find out more information after this seminar, you can go to qsm.com. We're also a research company, and we have a lot of ongoing research that we publish on the website. We have an ongoing blog, and we always have new case studies popping up as well. Where I thought I would start is just to sort of define how a mature measurement process would work and then show how estimating fits into that. What we'd like to do is we'd like to start with some historical data if we can, so that we can pull together our history and learn about, how have we completed software projects in the past? What are the typical numbers behind those software projects? How long did they take to finish? How much effort was spent? How big were the projects? How big were the team sizes? Things like that. So we'd like to have a working repository of history if we can. Now, most people that start on these programs, on these projects, don't have a lot of history, but that's the end goal. We want to start pulling together some data on projects that have been completed. We're going to use that information when we go to run our estimates. We're going to try to leverage the data that we have, size, duration, and effort information, so that we can do a better job of predicting the future. So those early estimates will start with a scope level estimate, and then we'll hopefully refine the estimates as we get more information on the project that we're about to begin with. Once we get an estimate that we like, then we're going to hopefully track it and provide some control bounds and some oversight on those estimates. So we want to be able to look at plans and actuals, and then we want to be able to re-estimate when things change. So a lot of times on software, as we know, the requirements will change as we're going through the project, and we want to be able to adapt to that and regenerate the estimates when things change. So that's the control and forecasting piece of this. We'll follow the project through, and then once it's completed, we want to capture that historical data for the next time we run an estimate. So really supporting a full measurement process. Now, how does estimating fit in? Well, what we'd like to do is we'd like to answer some questions at the organizational level first. Like, we want to figure out who within our company is going to be responsible for the estimates, and we also want to figure out, how do we want to roll out these estimating models? Do we want to centralize it and have all of our folks running estimates in sort of a PMO establishment? So everything's centralized, everything goes through PMO. The project managers feed information to the PMO staff members. Or do we want to decentralize it? Do we want to have each of the project managers running their own estimates? Or do we want to do something, a combination of both? We want to have each of the project managers responsible for their own estimates, but also reporting and coordinating with a centralized estimating function, working together. So we want to decide how we want to roll it out, and then we also want to decide where do we want to run the estimates within our development life cycle. Do we want to do scope estimates early before the project starts, and then what point after that do we want to generate follow-up estimates? Maybe high-level design, we want to run a second estimate. As we get into detailed design, we want to run a third estimate. And then do we want to run estimates throughout the project? So we want to make all those decisions early at an organizational level. Once we do that, then we want to go ahead and figure out how we want to manage things at a project level. As you can see on the slide here, we've got some key components to focus on. The first and probably the most important is trying to pull together some sizing information. And sizing is usually the biggest challenge when we're estimating, but we want to try to get a feel for how much work has to be done on this project so that we can measure it more effectively. We also want to get a feel for our process productivity. Another way of saying that would be our efficiency. How efficient is the team and working on it, and how productive is the environment that we're working in? So we want to get a feel for how much work has to be done, the efficiency of our team, and we want to get a handle on the goals of the project. What are our constraints? Are we limited in team size? Does the customer need a certain amount of functionality delivered at a certain time? So we want to figure out the project goals. Then we want to generate an initial estimate. That's usually that scope level estimate. Before the project even starts, should we even move forward with this project? So that initial high level estimate, we want to be able to look at multiple scenarios, different trade-offs. How is the project going to be affected if we have a bigger team size? How is it going to be affected if we have more functionality or less? So we want to look at different estimating scenarios, and then we want to come up with an estimate. We want to choose the estimate scenario that we're the most comfortable with, the one that we feel like has the best chance of succeeding. That's that commitment phase here. Once we get an estimate, a macro level estimate that we like and we're comfortable with, where we know, how long it's going to take us, how many people we're going to need, how much it's going to cost, then we want to break that estimate down at a task level so we can manage the project on a day-to-day basis. So those are sort of some of the things we want to focus on at a project level. To hone in on it a little bit more, let's talk a little bit about size, because that's probably one of the most important things to doing a really good job of estimating is we want to get a handle on functionality. Now, a lot of times when we start working with people, when we ask them how big, they'll say it's a certain dollar amount big, or it's $10 million big, or it's 6 months big. And that's okay, but what we really like to get to is functional size. How much work can the team deliver? How much functionality can that team deliver? And this is usually the most challenging part of the estimating process, and we can really work with clients in a detailed way here and help them create a sizing process and methodology to go along with their estimating. The other thing we really want to focus on is that productivity factor that I mentioned, or we call it a productivity index here at QSM. And we really want to figure out how efficient is the team and how good is the environment that we're working in. We're going to figure out these productivity measures based on historical data. We're going to take information from projects that have been completed and figure out and take into account how big they were, size, functionality-wise, and we're going to also take into account the duration of the effort so that we can measure our productivity. Now, we also have the QSM industry database. We also recommend using some industry benchmarks to help with these productivity measures to see how you compare to other people in your industry. And that history is going to be really important. We're going to want to leverage our historical data to do a better job of estimating. We're going to want to analyze the patterns in our historical data. We're going to want to leverage industry data as well. So your own history and also bouncing off an industry database so that we can get a really good feel for how we've performed in the past and how that's going to affect us in the future. We're going to want to look at multiple estimating scenarios, like I mentioned earlier. So not just generating some numbers off the bat and then going with it. We're going to want to look at different trade-offs. What if we add people? What if we reduce the amount of functionality? And we're going to want to really look at our budget goals, our project goals, schedule and budget, and reliability goals, and we're going to want to make sure we can meet those goals. If we cannot meet those goals, we're going to want to look at some alternatives like reducing scope, increasing or decreasing staff. We want to really do a good job of examining our productivity so that we can do a good job of measuring forward. We're going to want to be able to pick an estimate that we're comfortable with after looking at these multiple scenarios. And I don't know if you can see on the slide on the bottom, we're going to want to sanity check those estimates, those early estimates with industry data to make sure they're credible, and also with our own history to make sure we're comfortable moving forward. And so we can show credibility for the estimate that we're getting ready to try to support. Here's my contact slide for after the seminar in case anybody wants to call with questions as well, and I'll bring this up again at the end. We're going to want to talk now about how do we automate this and how do we make this estimation process, these key components, easier to manage. As you can see on the screen, we're actually in the estimating tool. We call it SLIM. It also stands for Software Lifecycle Management. And this is how we at QSM make things easier and how we automate that whole estimating process. And SLIM is really a methodology and a tool, and I'm going to kind of take you through how it works and how it would support that full measurement process and that full estimating process. SLIM also is known as the Putnam model, so you may have heard of it previously. If I go to the Tools menu, I can access all the tools in the suite. SLIM, again, stands for Software Lifecycle Management, so really we're supporting that full measurement process. We have the SLIM Data Manager to capture that historical data that I mentioned that's so important. We have SLIM Estimate to actually generate the estimates in a repeatable, consistent way. We have SLIM Control for that oversight portion where, once we generate the estimate, we want to track it and re-estimate when things change. We have Master Plan to do estimates at an organizational level because I mentioned earlier in the presentation that making decisions at the organizational level is very important. And then we have SLIM Metrics to analyze the data once the projects are completed for process improvement type of work. I'm going to start with the Data Manager because capturing your historical data is really one of the most important things to doing a good job of estimating. Now you can see I've got a number of projects that have been completed here. I'm going to open one up to give you a feel for the kind of history we'd like to capture. Size, again, is one of the most important things. Now this says function points, but this could be really any sizing metric that you're comfortable with as long as we're consistent. So function points here is the example. We've got about 900 function points, and this project has been completed. And then at least on the main build, or here we're calling it construct and test, we want to capture duration and the effort on that project. I'm saying project, I'm defining, this can be defined as a release or actually delivering a final product or a final system. So we want to capture how much work that was completed, and we want to capture the duration and the effort. Once we get those three measures, we can calculate, or SLIM will be able to calculate what we call a productivity index. And this is that measure of efficiency that I said is so important to the estimating process. So we're going to calculate it empirically here based on historical data. Now the productivity index is that measure of efficiency. It actually takes into account the whole project environment. Things like, how experienced are the people on the project? How good are the tools and methods that we're using? What about the complexity of the software that we're working on? All that is factored into this productivity index. And the beauty of this is we can mathematically calculate it. So we can take the subjectivity out of this measure. The higher this number, the better, right? So, and this is also going to be determined by the type of application. So if I'm doing business type of software, those PIs are going to tend to be higher than if I'm doing command and control or avionics types of systems or more engineering types of systems. So keep this in mind as I go through the seminar here, or the presentation. Once we get functional size, duration, effort, we can calculate our efficiency, or we're calling it a productivity index here. This is going to be a big factor in the success of our estimating program. I'm going to go back to the estimating tool. Now we can leverage that history. I would click on the history button here and we'd load the history in that we think is relevant, right, to the project we're about to estimate. And again, these historical projects, we documented the size, duration, and effort, and the efficiency. Now early on, I'm going to use that information here. So as soon as I run an estimate, before I do any detailed planning, I'm going to make sure that my macro level estimate or my top-down estimate is good, is reliable. So this red data point here would be my estimate. This is for effort, but this could say duration, reliability, cost, or whatever I'm working with, or combination of measures. As soon as I run that estimate, I want to make sure it's consistent with my historical data. So these gray data points here are the projects in that data manager I showed you, right? And I also referenced it in the slide, how important the history is. So as soon as I run the estimate, I want to make sure it's consistent with my history. And I also, if I have an industry database or a tool like SLIM, I can make sure that that estimate is consistent with industry data. And a lot of the folks that start with estimating programs don't have a lot of history, so the industry database even becomes more important because we want to make sure that estimate's consistent with industry and with our history before we move forward with the commitments that we're going to have to make. So we want to avoid, we call it the impossible zone here, we want to avoid signing up to a budget or a cost or a schedule that's unrealistic. And we can see that at a bird's eye view right away here using SLIM, even before we do any detailed planning. Okay, so we want to start here kind of at a big picture view to make sure we're on the right path. Now, how do we actually start running an estimate? Well, the first thing we'll do is we'll try to pull together some information on the particular project environment that we're working in. So we would want to define your phases and your milestones, things like that, your process, so it's repeatable and consistent. And we want to try to make it consistent across the organization if we can. Then we're going to make a decision. How do we want to approach the estimate? And that's going to be based on what you know going in. So if we don't have a lot of information on the project, we might start very high level. Like maybe we don't have any sizing information, things like that. So this would be one example of how we might start. We call this a level of effort wizard because so many of the people that start working with us think in terms of effort. So we're going to come in and we're going to put the name of the project in, the start date, and this of course can change, the phases that we want to include and how we would define them in the estimate. We're going to rely on the QSM industry database. I mentioned earlier with the slides that QSM has a really large industry database. That's sort of the core of our business here. We're going to tell SLIM, what kind of project are we working on? Is it a business system? Is it an engineering system? If it's a business system, is it an agile, waterfall? Is it financial? What kind of project are we working on? Then we're going to go ahead and tell SLIM what our budget is. Okay, now, we can approach the estimate totally differently. If we want to calculate the budget, we would approach it differently. But in this example here, we're going to tell SLIM what our budget is. And if we don't know that number, we can tell SLIM what our team size is. And this is flexible. We can work very small projects or very large projects. So we're flexible here. So we might want to tell SLIM what our team size is. And then we're going to put in that productivity index. We're going to get that information from the QSM database, or we're going to get our productivity index from our own history or from our own experience. Then we have an option to answer some questions about our project environment if we want to tune that industry number more towards us, right? If we want to tune that, we can. The beauty of using something like SLIM is we don't have to answer a lot of subjective questions. We can calculate that productivity index from real data. And then finish, okay? And this is one way that we're going to generate the estimate. It'll run the model, and it'll actually give us the option of saving that estimate in this repository of estimates. When I click on one of these, what it does is it updates all of these views here for that particular estimate. You remember I mentioned in the slides that we want to select and present an estimate. Half the battle of estimating is showing credibility for the work, right? We want to make sure we're on the right path. We want to make sure management is on board and the team and the customer are all on board with the estimate. So with SLIM, we do a really nice job of communicating the estimate and negotiating it. So as soon as we run that estimate again, we're going to be able to see if that estimate's reasonable. We're going to be able to look at the solution and look at different trade-offs. My first estimate here, right out of the box, is telling me 12 months with $3 million. I've got a little summary here with 29 people. Okay. Now, one of the goals that I had on this project is to get done in 11 months, but it's telling me here that's probably not going to happen. Only about a 30% chance or 33% chance of getting done in 11 months. Much more likely that we're going to get done in 12 months. That's what SLIM is telling us. Now let's say this first estimate is my 50% solution. Right out of the box, I don't have a lot of information on the project. Now remember I mentioned as part of the estimating process, we want to pick points in time when to do the second estimate and the third estimate, right? Maybe the fourth estimate and ongoing. Maybe we don't have that luxury early on, so what we're going to do with SLIM is we're going to run a contingency plan right now. I want SLIM to tell me, give me the project, the budget, and the schedule that I've got a 90% chance of hitting, right? So I'm going to look at a more conservative estimate now early so I can plan more effectively. And when I hit next and finish, it'll run an estimate that's more conservative. So it elongates, stretches the schedule to 13 months, a little higher budget, quite a bit higher budget here, bigger team size. Okay, this might be one solution that I want to take into account. Now I'm going to log that as my 90% solution. This schedule might be something I condition the customer to, right? I might condition the development team to something like the first estimate that I ran, the 50% solution. Okay, so I'm looking at trade-offs here. I come up with the first estimate. I can do it graphically too. In real time, I can say, okay, what's it going to cost me to get this project done in May instead of June? And I just ran a whole new estimate within a few seconds. Okay, I can go back to the initial estimate. So I can look at trade-offs. I can look at different scenarios. What if we work to a bigger team size? instead of 27 people, what if I work, I add 5 to 10 people? I can also be very specific here. I can say, give me an estimate with a team size of 40. Now, if I was using a spreadsheet or something like that, it might take a lot longer, and the spreadsheet might automatically say, hey, that's a great idea. But with SLIM, we know that there are nonlinearities that happen in software. Oftentimes, we get a diminishing returns when we add people. The SLIM model reflects all that and helps us plan more effectively and lets us look at these trade-offs more quickly. So now we can see how much it's going to cost and how long it will take with a bigger team size within seconds. So hopefully we're saving some time. We're streamlining the estimating process a little bit, especially on these early estimates. We can do a nice job of analyzing the risk. Like I'd mentioned earlier, got a great chance of getting done in 14 months, but not such a good chance of getting done in a shorter schedule. So we want to take all this into account, and we also want to take into account reliability. Is the software going to work well at delivery time? Now, all this high-level information is great because a lot of big business decisions get made early before the project starts. Once we get into the project a little bit, we can do some additional analysis. Even before that, we can use SLIM to break down the estimate at a lower level. A lot of people will use PPM types of tools to do the resource planning at a detail level. With SLIM, before you get into the PPM tool, we can figure out, how much effort are we going to spend by role, by month. And then this information can go into the PPM tools for more detailed planning. And all these views here in SLIM toggle to reports, so we can see exactly how many programmers I'm going to need by month. And testing, QA, all the above, everybody. We can kind of see where they're going to fit in. Now, once we get an estimate we like and we select and present it, then we're going to want to go ahead and track the project. Okay, this is part of that overall mature measurement process. Okay, so not only are we going to want to run the estimates, but we're also going to want to be able to make sure that we're staying on plan. SLIM Control here provides a nice dashboard and shows us the metrics that we care about. We've got the schedule and the people, the cost, the features or functionality. And this says features, but again, this could say lines of code, it could say function points, it could say user stories. We can tailor this for Agile, Waterfall, anything in between, right? So it's flexible, really any design process. Let's look at one of the views here. I'd initially planned on finishing in February, right, or March. That's the blue bar. That was my initial estimate. The red bar is actually where I am now, where my development team is on the project in time. The white bar is my new estimate from SLIM Control. We're actually curve fitting to the actuals. So once a month, we're putting in some very high-level information. Just the totals. We don't need all the timesheet data, just the totals once a month. Total people each month. Total work done each month. Total defects if we want to measure reliability. Total use cases, things like that. Once a month or a time period that you're comfortable with, might be once a week. We're putting in the actuals and we're seeing if we're staying on plan. And in this example, we're not. We're actually falling a little bit behind. Let's take a closer look at that. So we had planned initially to finish about 250 features. We had planned on a $2 million budget at a PI of a 16.1. Now what's happening here is SLIM Control is taking the actual amount of work completed and the actual effort spent, the actual duration elapsed, and it's recalculating that productivity index. It's telling us that we're only going to achieve 197 features at a higher cost, right, with a longer schedule. And the reason why is because what it's doing is it's recalculating that productivity index. It's taking that actual duration and effort and actual work delivered and recalculating it and telling us that we're only achieving a 14.5 productivity index. So we're not working to the level of efficiency that we had planned. So this is important information for the next time we run an estimate and also to save this project. So we can go in and look at some different trade-offs. Even during the project we can do this. A lot of people say, let's add people. Will that help? And we can run an estimate with a bigger team size in the middle of the project within a few seconds here, and we can see that it's not going to help very much. In this example, we're only going to save 3 or 4 weeks, and the cost is going to go way up. This is something we want to take into account. This is valuable information to hopefully save us some money on this project. When I hit OK, it updates all the views for that new estimate midway through the project and shows us that we're still not going to finish on time. We're going to ramp up the cost and the people to get the same amount of functionality done for the client. So we're tracking the project now. We're making decisions as we go. And once that project's complete, it's going to feed back into that data manager, right, for that full measurement process. And then we're going to analyze that data using SLIM metrics, right, because we want to see how we're doing process improvement-wise. So the next time we run an estimate, We're going to be knowledgeable about our past. So in this example here, we've got 3 divisions in this company, and this is just showing us the total number of projects per division. But what Slim Metrics lets us do is it lets us analyze the relationships as well. So in this example here, we're looking at size on the horizontal. This is SLOC, but this could say, again, whatever you are comfortable with. This could say user stories, function points, features, modules, whatever you're comfortable with. As the projects are getting bigger, we're spending more effort. Each one of these projects is one of yours, hypothetically, in the data manager, right? That's your history repository that we recommend as a best practice. Projects are getting bigger, they're taking longer. You can see we've got a trend line showing us the average. We can also break it out into more detail by phase. So here we're looking at the construction phase or main build phase of each of these projects. As the projects are getting bigger, they're taking longer. Pretty easy relationship. And this is a custom trend. We can also bring in the QSM database trend, and bring in how do we compare to the industry average. And we can see that this particular company actually takes longer than the industry average. And this is something we want to think about the next time we run an estimate. So there you have it. In conclusion, this is really a full measurement process and showing how estimating fits in. It all links together. We want to capture some historical data, and we want to use that the next time we run an estimate. We want to track that estimate, and we want to come full circle and pull that historical data in again to bring consistency across the organization and across our estimating practice. And that concludes my presentation. Please definitely contact me if you have any questions or if you'd like some additional information. Thanks very much.